Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss The Purple Prince with some friends and the author, Sebastien Menkes. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Amanda, will you kick us off with an introduction, please?
I would love to. I'm Amanda. My channel is Shelf Unstable. I read The Purple Prince about August of last year, and I'm really excited to talk to more people about it and hopefully get more people reading it. So excited to be here with the author, Jimmy and Steve. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this book.
Yes, Mr. Nuts.
My name is Jimmy Nuts, if you weren't aware, and I have a little channel called the Fantasy Network where I did a review for the Purple Prince in a no spoiler fashion quite a few months ago now, and it is one that has stood out to me because it is one of my favorite self-pub books ever. In fact, super imaginative, and we'll talk about a lot of that. And my hope is that we get some more people to check this out, so we have more people to talk about and to theorize with, because I am rotten at theories, but I do believe that Purple Prince is right for theories for the following book. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Steve, Sebastian, Amanda. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Sebastian?
Hi, I'm Sebastian, or Basti to my friends. You guys can call me whatever you like. Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm also a father of two, and yeah, I'm just doing my best here. Yeah, excited to talk about this book. It had a very long gestational period. I was working on this not consistently, but over the course of about 8 years before it came out to the world, and it's nice to kind of go back and kind of yeah, just discuss it and pick it apart a little bit. I've had some distance from it now. It came out roughly a year ago, and I haven't really been looking at it in that time. I haven't really been writing a whole lot either. I've been out of the kind of output, and I've just been on input. So I've just been reading and putting it aside. So it's going to be fun to kind of dive back in with you guys.
Awesome.
Nice.
8 years is quite a long time. My God.
Long journey.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. From like the first little nuggets of an idea in yeah about 2014. But it was on the back burner for a lot of those 8 years. I wasn't slaving away for 8 consistent years. I wrote the first draft when I broke my arm in 2017, and then I polished it up to a publishable standard or near enough when I lost my job during COVID. So it seems I need some sort of physical or financial crisis to write. So I'm just waiting on something, a vehicle to run me over or something for me to write the second book. But yeah,
we can arrange
anytime
that.
now.
I mean,
Please make it happen. Honestly, I need it. It seems.
I got this guy. He did a number on Alan.
Oh. Is it the same guy that ran over Stephen King? Maybe.
Yeah, same guy. Actually, it's in the family. That was his dad, and they've done wonderful work over there.
Oh, they're pros. Our friend Rachel Morley is here. I'm determined not to miss this stream. Have I read the book? No. Have we even heard of it? Also no. But I will maybe add it to the endless TBR, possibly.
I want to turn that possibly into a probably.
It'll be a yes. By the time we're done. Benjamin, hello everyone. I see Sebastian brought an entourage.
The cronies, if you will.
If you will. Tall Guy Reads just picked up a copy of this today. Really looking forward to finally diving into this one.
And that's impressive because when you're that tall, picking up things, bending at the hips, it is not an easy task.
A lot of energy to do that. The bees knees, thanks for coming. Cut to Seb staring longingly at ongoing traffic.
Bees actually, I believe, made some fan art for the Purple Prince.
Oh, dude.
Really incredible.
Amazing. Hey, Garrick. Is there any way that we can show Bee's artwork up if she's okay with that? Because I guess it's kind of a spoiler. Maybe we can leave that till later in the video. But it's super cool.
Is it online somewhere? I can try and pull it up.
I don't know if she's got it like on a website or a blog or something, but there's in Jimmy's Discord. There's like a JPEG of it.
I'm working on it.
Okay, sweet.
I think there's a lot of fan art potential in this series. Yes. I think it's like very aesthetically pleasing, like the descriptions and the different lands and the colors, and yeah, there's some good stuff that can happen, and especially as the series goes on, Sebastien, and the direction that I could see things going could get kind of weird.
It's gonna get weird. Yeah, the visual thing. I don't know. I'm a very visual reader, and I guess almost as a consequence, a visual writer as well. I'm not quite sure entirely where that stems from, but I'm as Amanda and I were talking about recently on a Discord call. I'm like a big dreamer. I don't mean that and like I have ambitions to conquer the world. I mean I'm a big dreamer, and I dream a lot and have like sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I've always been very informed by dreams, and they have always been very vivid and had a lot of kind of like rich kind of visual detail. So maybe that kind of spills over into the writing a bit. But yeah, I really see these places and I see these people. Yeah.
Yeah. Carries over with the dream aspect too. I mean, the series is the River Dream, and I don't think it's quite spoiler talk to say that dreams play a pretty big role, it seems.
Yeah.
From making you go insane if you have them to other aspects.
Yeah, dreams as prophecy, and yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess as someone who's always dreamed a lot, I've really resonated with media that is very kind of dream heavy. So whether it's something like a Twin Peaks, I don't know if you guys have watched that, but there's like important plot info gets delivered via dreams. The whole dream aspect really gets ramped up in the most recent season of Twin Peaks. But yeah, A Song of Ice and Fire, honestly, it might not sort of jump straight to your mind, but there's a lot of dreaming and dream imagery in that series. That stuff has always really just appealed to me in a very powerful way. So yeah, it was kind of inevitable that when I was going to write something, if I was going to write something, it was going to kind of revolve around dreams in a big way.
Yeah. Dreams are a pretty excellent tool. I think a lot of times when people hear about dreams, they think prophetic dreams or maybe a dream world, right? We have that in Wheel of Time. But one thing that dreams can do, and I think that it is used like this in Purple Prince, it is also used this way in A Song of Ice and Fire, is actually to put an undercurrent in character development into play, where a lot of times you can actually start to pull and make assumptions about people's relationships, maybe it might be, or just their overall desires from their dreams. For instance, to keep it spoiler free for Purple Prince, but like Tyrion, for instance, has a lot of dreams about riding dragons and burning down Castle Rock. And, those things, I think, say a lot about his relationship with his family and, more importantly, his like dad. So dreams are like really, really versatile, and they're one of my favorite things that people can use. So I love that aspect of Purple Prince. I think that you do really, really good dream sequences. And I also do have the picture that Bees drew for the fan art. I think we could show it because it's a spoiler, but like if you don't know, I don't think you would know.
No context spoiler.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, let me I think I can share. All right.
There you go.
Yeah, and then if you put that in to the stream, I think it'll show it. Boom.
There we go.
I mean, first off, Bees is super talented. This is amazing. Secondly, this is the type of imagery that you can expect if you have an imagination, which I don't, in Purple Prince. There's so many things that are just like over the top, but not in the cheesy, corny way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And what Sebastien was saying earlier about getting inputs right now for writing, I think in Purple Prince, there's some of like you can see where his influences come from. Like China Miéville, I think is a huge one. We've definitely talked about how much that author and his work resonates with Sebastien and me. And ever since, and I think Jimmy read Perdido Street Station. Steve, I don't know if you've read any China Miéville, but I think Sebastien wears that influence very well in the Purple Prince, just with his descriptions and kind of the weirdness, but it's still, the series still has like that cozy kind of like epic fantasy feel to it while still being like really weird and imaginative. I think that's a really good balance that you hit in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Because I definitely started the book when I was at my sort of peak A Song of Ice and Fire sort of fanness. So I guess that shows in sort of this being kind of like I guess it's not quite medieval, sort of post-medieval, maybe sort of like 17th, 18th century technologically wise, fantasy world, but with like all the different like the families and the political intrigue and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely shows through that. Speaking of the dreams and stuff as well, about how like dreams can be used for characterization purposes. I mentioned briefly in that little forward thing I have at the front of the book. I don't know if anyone even read that, but I wanted to include it anyway, where I talk about how the first idea of like starting way back at the beginning, like the cosmogony and theogony, like the birth of the universe, birth of the gods, that came when I was studying Greek myth at university, my first year. Yeah, a lot of the sort of analysis of Greek myth we were doing was kind of like Jungian philosophy. And I think there's a Jung quote which is super good. I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the line of like understanding dreams is like the Silk Road to understanding consciousness. It's just like so much about a person is revealed by how they dream and what they dream. So I think that definitely showed. But yeah, I think I definitely wear my influences on my sleeve. I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah, I definitely had a huge inspiration from reading China Mieville while this book was in its kind of gestational period. Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of the things I was reading, the shows I was watching, music I was listening to, it all kind of snuck through there in some subtle ways and in some like overt ways, where like sometimes I'm pretty pretty frank with my influences when I'll just like name drop, Gardens of the Moon or something like that. But yeah,
They're fun to find as
They are.
people that read, a lot of your inspirations. It's always fun to find those Easter eggs in books. So I appreciate you being there.
I'm definitely one who appreciates those things. And when people are like students of the genre, I'm a much bigger fan of that. I always feel a little suspect whenever I talk to someone like, yeah, I haven't read a lot of fantasy. And I'm just like, it gets harder. It's kind of a double-edged sword because it's a little harder to stand out, I think, if you don't know what has been done. But at the same time, maybe not knowing the constraints of the genre open you up. I think that you do a good job of making your own thing while still feeling like you've read a ton of the fantasy genre, which you have. Like for instance, like your multiple POVs, which we have a ton of characters here, with Angelo, Mila, Benedict, Raywin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing all those right. They're fairly normal names, so I think I might be able to realm. Okay,
you got 3 out of 4.
Angelo? I don't know. I'm guessing.
Angelo.
Mila?
No, it's Mila, yeah. But other than that,
Mila. Okay.
Mila.
I'm sorry. So Mila.
With our powers combined, Jimmy, we got him.
I felt very much a Song of Ice and Fire, though, in the way that you were flexing the POVs. These people were not all in the same locations. You had some people very, very far away. And, I had my Kickstarter map out. I was trying to pinpoint where people were. And you did something, this is kind of like away from the book, but something really dope about this map is that you have the location of the character represented by a symbol. And I thought that was super cool. And I have to imagine that maybe in your fantasy time that you maybe busted out a map once or twice and maybe did the strings of like where people were going.
Yeah, it's very important for me to have kind of like a geographical sense of a fantasy world. I can't tell you how many times during reading the Second Apocalypse I flicked to the map at the back just to see quite where he was talking about where these characters were, or he's talking about some general hailing from High Anon. I wanted to know where the hell that was. Yeah, it's very important for me. I guess it's kind of an extension maybe of that kind of me being a very visual reader. I need to like very much like visually conceptualize and have like a clear image in my head of what's going on, and that definitely extends to the map. Yeah, where a fantasy book without a map is a sorry thing in my opinion, particularly if it's kind of sprawling international kind of story.
I'm with you. It's just a whole other level of immersion whenever you can bust it out. And your map is excellent. I don't know who did it for you, but it's one of the better fantasy maps that I've seen, without a doubt.
Thank you. I actually made that myself.
Oh, wow.
Did you?
Yeah,
really?
there's a I did. Yeah, there's a map making program, like a PC application called Wonderdrop. It's one of the couple big map making programs. I made it in there. It took me hours and hours. I can claim credit for everything in there except for like the assets, like the free assets that like the DRM free assets that came with the program, which I used for like the mountains, the trees, the ruins and stuff. But it was also a nice opportunity to again show off some of that wonderful artwork that has been made for me for the series. Like you'd see like the character symbols that you were showing before, and also how like each nation on the map has its own sort of coat of arms. These images show up in the physical book, but it was nice to show them again there. So yeah,
The art
no,
in this book is so good too.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh man, yeah. The fact that you
Beautiful.
put portraits of the characters before their POV chapter was just like more. I would love for more people to do something like that. The
and they
quality.
each have oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was saying the quality is
Oh.
just absurd of this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, and along with the character portraits, they have like their own symbol that starts the
Mhm.
POV chapter, so you know whose chapter it is. It's just really cool. Like it's all so well laid out and artistic. Especially not that there's like any like self-pub versus traditional pub, but for a self-published book, yeah, it's just so polished and so well put together and impressive.
So glad to hear you say that. Yeah, there was a lot of. I'm glad that it has sort of, I think, quite a cohesive feel and aesthetic to it, given the fact that this is, I mean, the book I wrote myself, of course, but there were quite a few sort of creative hands on deck there. The character portraits that appear in the first chapter of each POV, those were done by one gentleman from Indonesia, and then there was the cover art was done by someone else from Sri Lanka. The symbols for the characters and the nations, that was done by a girl here in Iceland where I live, and the gods were drawn by yet another person. I've got the gods here actually. Maybe you want to show those on stream. I think these are super cool artworks. These were like Kickstarter extras for people that backed this project. But yeah, these, yeah, I'm super happy with these.
They're so cool.
Yeah. Right. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, they were done by a gentleman named Julian, who is a Polish gentleman living in Brazil, I believe. And so yeah, there's a lot of people from all different corners of the world, all kind of coming together and helping me with like the kind of the visual side of things. And for how many books were involved in this broth, I think it's pretty coherent.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
I hope that's fair to say. But, yeah. Souls, Bloodborne references. See, I don't know what Ben's talking about there. I'm just sorry. I just need to like comb my eyebrows slightly. But, yeah, this is like a little brush I have there. But yeah, Souls and Bloodborne. I'm not like a huge fan, I would say. But, they're okay. I might have played them once or twice, watched the stream or something. But, yeah, no, that's another huge influence. That's definitely in there. Yeah. No, those games definitely inspired me a lot on sort of a narrative level and aesthetic level. So yeah, those definitely this. And again with Bloodborne, it's not really a spoiler for the game, but that's a game that has a lot of sort of like dreaming in it and dream realities and that sort of thing. And yeah, so again, that's a piece of media that really resonated with me, and yeah, lent itself to this kind of story.
And Rachel, my college didn't offer mythology studies. I feel ripped off. And again, it'd probably have destroyed my love of myths.
That really depends on your lecturer. I think I had this amazing gentleman who he was pushing 70, I think, and my mum, who was born in 1963, she had him when she was at university. So he has been in this game for a long time, and his experience, he's just like a Greek myth veteran. You can see like his level of deep knowledge and expertise and just enthusiasm, decades of it, just really showed through in his lectures. So I'm very lucky to have had him. I think it's a lot of these subjects, a lot of this kind of academic content is really hinged upon whether you have a good teacher or not, because they can really like make it or break it for you. I think I've been very fortunate like throughout throughout my kind of academic career to have had really great teachers who have really inspired me. You know, when I was taking English lit and philosophy and classical studies, myth and stuff at university, my lectures were all fantastic, and I think without them, I don't know if this book would exist.
Yeah, because it does go beyond just writing, right? It goes into all different types of the brain, different subjects too. When did you first think like I'm going to be a writer? Was it whenever you were in university?
No, it was when I was about 3 or 4 years old. Believe it or not, I had this instant young attraction to writing and also to illustrating. My favorite thing to do all day, every day, was to write stories and illustrate them. Um, again, I mentioned in this little forward thing in the front of Purple Prince that no one probably read, but that's fine. Where I had a character called Pajama Man who was like this Jewish superhero who wore pajamas, and I've been writing and illustrating Pajama Man comics since I was a very young lad. My mum actually came from New Zealand, which is where I was born. I came and visited me here in Iceland to meet my second child, my daughter, last summer, and she brought some. I'll just see if I can show you a little something. Let's see. Yeah, this is Pajama Man, the Armageddon trilogy. Like, this is stuff I was writing and illustrating from a very young age. And I saw over time I kind of phased out the illustration aspect and just compensated by having very kind of, I guess, visual writing, if that's fair to say. But yeah, I was always writing stories about Pajama Man and about robots and about aliens and about all sorts of stuff. I guess it was when I saw the Lord of the Rings films that really kind of awoke a love for fantasy in me. I had actually it was tied up a lot with me being from New Zealand because at the time of the first film coming out, Fellowship of the Ring in 2001, I was 6 years old. And I had recently left New Zealand for a 5-year period. My family, we relocated to the literal other side of the globe to move to Wales. And it was an awkward time for me to move. Maybe it was a little bit easier for my little brother, who's a bit younger, or my sister, who's a bit older. But for me, it was like I had 1 year of primary school, and I had sort of just started to, make my first friends and these sorts of things. And then we just got relocated to the other side of the planet, and that was very, very difficult. And I really missed New Zealand and really wanted to go back. And I kind of got an opportunity to do that, as cheesy as it sounds, by watching the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, not only watching these amazing films and this amazing story, which I had never heard of prior to seeing them, but getting to see New Zealand up on the big screen, it was kind of this sort of weird homesick thing tied in with this burgeoning love for fantasy. And yeah, from then I think all of my writing had a kind of a fantasy bent to it. There was always a dragon or a wizard or a dark lord or something, and that never really went away.
The boogeyman aspect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Captain Underpants, eat your heart out. Pajama Man's here to take over.
Overton and the Blue King.
I love it.
And what was your experience like with the Kickstarter? How did that come to be? How did you decide to go that route?
Well, I was a very I was very keenly aware of Kickstarter, partly because, as you maybe can see in the sort of the lower shelf of this IKEA piece of furniture behind me, you can see a fraction of the board games I own. I'm a big board gamer and a sucker for cool miniatures and Kickstarter goodies and stuff like that, which I guess really inspired me with commissioning stuff like this. But yeah, so I was on Kickstarter a lot and backing Kickstarters, and both for the products I would actually receive, and also just for this kind of, I guess, this idea of supporting independent creative projects just really appealed to me. Yeah, I guess through using Kickstarter to back board games and such, I became aware of there being maybe a bit of a burgeoning sort of publishing aspect to Kickstarter. Like quite a few books being published there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there that's like LGBTQ stuff, and there's like romance novels, and there's all sorts of stuff, and there's a lot of like lit RPG and sort of kind of, I guess, sort of niche stuff. But there's also quite a lot of just epic fantasy books as well, and I had seen some in the sort of the year prior to me running my Kickstarter, which was done in sort of October 2021, something like that, September 2021. I'd seen a lot of them do very well, and it was very inspiring and encouraging for me. I mean, there are some authors who are quite established that still use Kickstarter, like this, what's his name, Kevin J. Sullivan, something like that.
Michael J. Sullivan, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Right, yeah. He's backed a few books. He's done a few books on there. I know Brandon Sanderson famously had his record-breaking, blockbusting Kickstarter project. So yeah, it's a really good website, I think, for these both of these bigger writers, but also some of these smaller ones as well. Someone, you know, releasing their debut novel on there and them not only meeting their funding goal, but sometimes quite surpassing it. That was very inspiring to me. So I thought to kind of generate the capital to sort of print this book and distribute it and yada yada yada. I thought Kickstarter felt like a good place for that. So yeah, I think it was my first time. It was my first time in many regards. This was the first book I ever wrote, discounting Pajama Man. This was the first Kickstarter campaign I ever ran, and I think that shows. There were some things I definitely could have done differently, and as far as like fulfillment of the rewards go for like getting the books that people bought to the Kickstarter backers, I maybe couldn't have picked a worse time because it kind of happened all during COVID, and I was getting printing quotes for like full print, 100 copies of the hardback, 100 copies of the paperback from one company, and then I was like, okay, great, I know how much I should charge then per book for on the Kickstarter, and then the Kickstarter runs, and then by the time the Kickstarter has finished and I've collected those funds, the price has gone up considerably. Printing costs as well as postage costs as well. It was tough. It was a hell of a lot of work. It felt like almost a full-time job running that Kickstarter campaign and fulfilling it just with, there's so many things you need to do. It's not just, writing the book itself, but you have to sort of have kind of like a social media presence and make these posts on Kickstarter to kind of engage with the backers and ask them what they'd like to see and kind of and then I have to be making phone calls and sending emails to try and get it to happen physically and running ad campaigns and stuff, and I'm not that kind of thinker. I'm sort of I just drift off into space and daydream during the day and legit dream during the night, so I'm not really kind of like a numbers Excel kind of minded guy. This is very alien to me, this whole idea of calculating kind of cost per click and which revenue streams are most whatever, like that's just not how my brain works. So that was a real challenge for me. I had to kind of I had to not only do the kind of the creative side of things, the writing the book and kind of coordinating the other input, with these different illustrators and artists, but I also had to do the kind of business side of things too, which is not in my nature. Maybe if I can afford to, with the next book, which I plan to also self-publish and to kickstart, based on my first attempt going quite well, and my funding goal being reached and even surpassed a little. I might see if I can bring somebody else on if I can afford it, just to kind of take care of some of that stuff for me, because
Definitely.
I like the idea of being the dude that does the creative side of things and not have to worry about that other stuff, because it doesn't interest me and I find it extremely difficult.
And Lemon commented, your communication was great, though. We were happy to wait. Congratulations on the book.
Oh, thanks, Lemon.
And Rachel had a question. Any tips for running a successful Kickstarter? What sort of sorcery do we need to dabble in?
I would say it's kind of like a soft magic system, as in you don't really understand quite what's going on. I don't know what sort of lightning in a bottle thing. Like a lot of people said to me afterwards, like, wow, who like I did a Reddit giveaway on like r/fantasy for like giving away 5 copies of the book, and someone commented being like, who are you? Like, you wrote this book and you ran this Kickstarter campaign and it funded. Like, that's not unheard of, but like that's really impressive. What did you do to make that happen? And I don't really know. I don't want to kind of humble brag, but yeah, it just kind of worked out okay. Yeah, I think the artists that I brought on to help with the kind of visual side of things really helped. You know, like people say, don't judge a book by its cover, but I think having a good book cover really helps get people excited and to kind of take it seriously, particularly with self-pub. Like if the cover was some sort of poorly photoshopped, I don't know, werewolf with abs or something, you know, it kind of like it doesn't, it kind of can confirm some of the people's negative preconceptions of self-pub. But I was very, very lucky with how good the cover was. I'm very, very happy with the cover, and I think the artist who created that for me, Kamika Dilshan, I think he's incredibly talented, and I think that helped enormously because yeah. Oh, thank you, Garrick. Yeah. Oh, glad to. I've got 2 backers. That's
3.
That's us. Oh,
4.
sweet. 4.
I'm on the
That's a start,
fence.
man.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm in.
Yeah.
I would say the artistry and all of that definitely goes a long way, because one of the things about self-pub that I think is awesome is the fact that you have more creative control to do those type of things. You're not going to be stuck with a big, purple prints and just text and like a dove in the background. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get stuck with something that's just so uninspired. And the artwork, I think, fits the book too. And that's something that doesn't always happen. I have read many self-published books that have the dankest art, but I'm like, that doesn't feel like the vibe I got from this story. And you're almost like, I want to read that story though. Like, I want to read the one that the art looks like. And I do think that your artist did do a good job of capturing the tone very, very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I was probably a bit of a pain to work with for all of these artists, because I had such a specific vision, and they would send me things being like, is this okay? And I'd be like, no, can you change that? Can you like make Angelo's stumps of his horn slightly smaller? They look too devilish. I don't want him to come across as a bad guy. I want him to come across as an anti-hero. And I like had lots of finicky little points of feedback for them. So I think I was probably an absolute nightmare to work with these guys, but maybe it paid off in some way. That yeah, whenever something came to me, I'm like, that doesn't look quite right, and they were always very patient with me, thankfully, to yeah, get it to look like it does now. But,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So should we get into the book?
Let's do it.
Well, first, I want to start by saying I love the prologue. It's one of my favorite prologues. That was fantastic.
Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funnily enough, the prologue is one of the last chapters I wrote.
Oh, so you wrote out of order?
Yeah, well, okay, so as I mentioned previously, the first draft of this book was written entirely when I broke my arm, my wrist in 2017. I was pretty high on pain medication, which maybe explains some of those dream sequences. But yeah, I wrote kind of a start to finish. I wrote kind of a start to finish version of this book, which was pretty bad. But the kind of the bones of the story were there. But originally, yeah, it began very, very differently. Originally, if you can believe it, the prologue was the chapter where we're just in full spoiler territory now, right?
Yeah.
The first chapter was the chapter where Neela and Co break into the Tower of the Sun, which I don't remember how late that happens in the finished product, but I think it's like, here we are, page 204. So that was originally page 1.
Wow.
Yeah. It this story really grew in the telling, I guess you could say. But yeah, originally it started because I don't know. It's the cheesiest cliche. It's so pretentious that like this people creative types talk about where they feel like, oh, I didn't write this song. I didn't write this book. It was beamed to me from somewhere in the ether. But like honestly, like this thing kind of wrote itself in a big way. Like I just got some strong images in my head of like, okay, there's a group and they're trying to break into this tower and they need a prophecy. And there's this girl. And her name is Mila. It's definitely Mila. There's no question about that. I don't need to sit and mull on what would be an appropriate name. That is just her name. It was like I was discovering the stuff that's so pretentious, but yeah. And I just had this idea of this kind of almost like a James Bond style opening, kind of like this action heist sequence, but fantasy. Um, and uh, yeah, after I wrote that, I then came up with a chapter that occurred earlier where Mila left home for the final time, closed the door of the tailoring shop that her father owns, and walked out into the desert, never to return. Um, I thought, like, if characters know Mila a bit better, then they will be more emotionally invested in her fate in this James Bond style heist sequence. Like, you know, because if I just start with characters breaking into this like high security place and the stakes are really high and people are going to die, like it's if you don't know who any of these characters are, I think it takes a better writer than me to get you to give a shit. So I thought, okay, let's meet Mila a little bit first. So I wrote that, and that was the prologue for a very long time. And then I did a kind of I was reading Dune at the time and all of its wonderful sequels, and I thought, oh, what if the prologue was like an in-world document, a transcript of an interview, which this actually appears in the book. There's an interview when Mila arrives in the cult headquarters of the Eye, the Fallen's headquarters. She has a meeting with the Drana Worm, the pale lady, and she is sort of grilled and interviewed and being like, who the hell are you? Why do you want to join us? What are you doing here? You should go home. You're the daughter of a tailor. This is like a cult of terrorists and murderers trying to bring down an empire. You're just a girl. Like, get the fuck out of here. um, that interview originally appeared in the book at the very beginning as sort of like a transcript written in italics, like it was some in-world document that had been presented, which I was a big fan of at the time. When I returned to it during COVID, I was less hot on it. I thought it would benefit with some of the kind of internal monologue and stuff. Again, this was all of these changes I made to the very beginning of the book. What I was like, okay, here's the entry point. It was all to flesh out the world more and let the reader invest in the characters more. Um, and then I wrote a different prologue, which I then scrapped, which was from the point of view of some Dawnbringer chasing Endymion skulls through the Durnic wilderness. That was quite a cool chapter, I thought, but in the end, it kind of didn't really need to be there. And then finally, very, very late in the piece, like I'm talking just 2 or 3 months before the book went to print, I was like, okay, I'm going to I kept rewinding. I kept going further back in the story and sort of the timeline of the world of like, okay, when are we going to start? When are we going to start in this heist sequence? No, we need to know Mila better from her childhood, or maybe from this transcript. Oh, okay. There's a lot of references to Uriel Thade and the Austrian rebellion, how that was something of an inciting event and sort of dictated a lot of things. You know, it dictated Benedict, the imperial prince, being betrothed to Ophelia Thade, the sort of walking on eggshells kind of political ambience of that this book kind of takes place in. A lot of the stuff is informed by Ariel Fade's rebellion. I'm like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a sort of Song of Ice and Fire style uh, prologue where it's from the point of view of one character that dies at the end, and I'll write it from the point of view of Ariel Fade at sort of a crucial point during her rebellion. And yeah, and that's the point I settled on. I also considered going back even further, and do I have like a longer prologue and where I talk about sort of like the beginning and middle of her rebellion, or there had to come a point where I just said, no, I can't keep rewinding, or I'm going to end up in the beginning, the gods were made kind of thing. But finally, I settled on at the 11th hour. I settled on this Uriel Fade prologue, and I think that might have been the right call. At least it gave me an opportunity to sort of really explore the dream aspects of this world, which are very crucial. Not immediately to any of the four main point of view characters, Mila a bit, but it gave me an opportunity to explore that and kind of set up a bigger scale conflict. It gave me the opportunity to sort of introduce a large existential sort of centuries in the making threat that would sort of hopefully, if I pulled it off, kind of act as kind of this sort of like looming sense of impending doom. This is what we really should be worrying about, kind of thing. That would kind of hang over the much more sort of small potato stuff of the subsequent chapters. So yeah, that's what I settled on, and yeah, I'm quite proud of that chapter. It is not really spoiler to say that the vein that's in of it being like really like high stakes, kind of end of the world stuff, gods coming back, oh shit, kind of stuff. Like that is where the series is headed, I would say. Question for Seb: antlers. Antlers what? Like why do the Austrians have antlers? You want to elaborate, Ben, and I'll get back to you.
But yeah, that prologue's great. I think it's like you said, a good spot between like all the what came before and then what we're about to experience, and then introduce some of the kind of hooks of the weird things in the story. I think, do we meet the Revenants in the prologue, or at least the idea of an undead something being controlled, which is probably one of the first things that I think of like the elements that I thought were really unique and interesting in the Purple Prince. The Revenants. Yes. And then I want to, like way later in the book, but I want to know what's going on in that room, in that tavern, with the noises being made behind the mysterious door. But yeah, the Revenants, and then the gods, and yeah, there's the antlers, of course, the dreams, all of that's really kind of baited in that beginning prologue. So I think that's a good choice for a spot to start.
Glad you think so. Yeah, I think I definitely tease a lot in that prologue. I kind of offer little glimmers of what may be to come. And I guess that's just something that, yeah, in different pieces of media, different books and different shows and stuff, that really resonates with me. I say what you want about it. I love Lost and all of the kind of the question marks that are raised there. Song of Ice and Fire, again, there's like so many mysteries that kind of very vaguely hint at that and allow a fan base without any new content for many years to kind of go full tinfoil and pick apart. I hoped that I accomplished what I was trying to do, which was lay some fishhooks out, some sort of points of interest for the reader to kind of keep in mind as the story progresses. But I just now all I have to do is kind of deliver on those hints and those promises, because otherwise they don't really mean anything. But I guess that's my my task going forward.
I was immediately drawn to the Revenants. I love necromancy in the first place, but also seeing Mila's reaction to them and how much she detests them, and like showing that whether or not she hates them, like they're a force to be reckoned with. It kind of reminds me of like what was the one Romero movie, like Day of the Dead, whenever like they're fighting the wars with the zombies instead of humans. Is that right? Am I remembering that correct?
From Day of the Dead? Haven't seen that one.
Steve, I feel like you have. Come on.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, they did fight with the zombies.
Yeah, and I just kind of thought that it's like, man, like that's something we should see more in fantasy. Like being like, yeah, we got this whole order of like warriors, and they're undead, so it's fine. It's all good.
Zombies being like an economic issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love that.
Jobs. Yeah,
that's definitely. I definitely took this writing this book as an opportunity to sort of get down some thoughts that have kind of been brewing in my head, things that I guess anxieties I have, or sort of topics that are kind of hot in my mind, points of concern for me. One of those is definitely late capitalism and this move towards automation of labor. That scares the shit out of me. In an ideal world, which is sadly not the world we live in, jobs being automated, manual labor being automated should be amazing. It's like, oh, sweet, we don't need to work anymore. Robots will do this for it, and computers will just take care of it, and we can just sit around like making art and chilling out and having a good time. But instead, we have the situation we have now. So, that is a big point of concern for me in real life, and I guess I took the Revenants as an opportunity to explore that a bit, with this idea of like, okay, well, like, what if the kind of menial jobs were taken care of? What would that look like? And that really depends on how this society is structured, because it could be a utopian thing or it could be absolutely dystopian. And this idea, which is something I'm really scared of happening in real life, or has even begun to, is this idea of, up until this point in human history, human beings, the masses, the proletariat, if you will, have always had this capacity for going on strike. And if they do that, if their work conditions and such are so poor, they can just refuse to do the work, and everything grinds to a halt. And the higher ups, the monarchy or their corporate overlords, have no choice but to sort of parlay with them and negotiate, and automation of labor is going to mean that the working class are going to lose that leverage. They're no longer going to be able to go on strike, and that being the kind of ace up their sleeve of like, okay, well, like, if you're going to treat us like shit and pay us like shit, we'll just not do the work, and society will just like grind to a halt. Very soon, that's not going to be a reality, because there will be robots that can do their jobs as substitutes, or will be doing them in the first place, and then suddenly these people lose like the one piece of leverage that they had, and then what's to become of them? And I mean, in the case of in my book, in the Kildarian Empire, these people are just impoverished. They start off having like a little sort of like a UBI type thing, getting these payments, which are kind of insufficient, and they get smaller and smaller over time. And it comes to a certain point of like, what would you do? Because okay, in this case, in the case of my book, like a zombie essentially has taken your job. You can't not do that job to bargain with the powers that be anymore. What do you do? Do you get together with some of these rabble with your pitchforks and your whatnot, and do you storm like a government building? Oh, well, that's just surrounded by rows upon rows of utterly fearless, utterly merciless killing machine zombies. So you're screwed essentially. And so this was me kind of exploring some like real world anxieties in kind of fiction form. Um, yeah.
You can use that in marketing. You can say, author fights back against AI with his own story here. I mean, it paints itself. This is beautiful. Reddit would love it.
Maybe.
Yeah, super well done and really unique, and has like some horrifying ways you could take it. So I'm pretty excited to see where that particular plotline goes.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there in the next book. That'll come to a head, which I'm really looking forward to. It's interesting. There's a gentleman whose name begins with a Z or a Z, as you would say in New Zealand parlance. And Jimmy's, I've mentioned in the wrong direction. There we go. There's Jimmy. In Jimmy's Discord, who read my book and enjoyed it, but the sense he got from reading The Purple Prince was that this doesn't exactly represent the story I truly want to tell. And I think that's a fair comment. I feel like so much of what happens in The Purple Prince, hopefully it stands on its own and is just sort of written, adequately and has some dramatic tension and is just worth the time it takes to read it. But a lot of it is sort of inciting events for things to come later. So yeah, I think my suspicion is that this book, though I'm not unproud of it, I think it is going to be the weakest in the series, definitely, because I feel like what it is doing predominantly is setting things up for later, or maybe that's a little bit unfair. Maybe it's more that it begins to explore ideas and introduce sort of aspects of the world and of the mythology. And these are, they're seeds in the Purple Prince, and they're going to be like fruit-bearing trees later on. I think that's maybe more fair to say. That if the things that people liked about Purple Prince are just going to be exponentially more rewarding, I think, hopefully, in subsequent books, because all of these things that I'm like, okay, yeah, and here's dreams, and here's prophecies, and here's the gods coming back, and here's the Revenants and stuff like that. They are all sort of in their infancy, these ideas in the first book, and then as the series progresses, they will become. I'm going to dive much deeper into these things now that a lot of groundwork has been laid. I can sort of really kind of sink my claws into it and kind of pick it apart and explore it and turn it inside out. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, because I think one of my favorite things about it was like how well the foreshadowing is done, and how well like the little pieces and snippets that you get kind of come to fruition, and like meticulously set up things that, like, I think in Jimmy, your review, it said like we should have seen some of these things coming, just how well they were set up. So yeah, if the Purple Prince is like that for the rest of the series, that's pretty exciting, because your foreshadowing is excellent.
And there's a lot of that here that like resolves in book 1 too. Like,
oh yeah,
there's
yeah,
twists and turns, and
yeah.
I mean, what? So, do you hate Ben as a character? Like, did you just want to? Like, I don't understand what your beef is with the young man, but he seems like a fine chap to me. But my God,
I'm cruel. It comes from me having a real world older brother called Benedict. I've always lived in the shadow, and no, I'm not joking. I do have an older brother called Benedict, and as strange as that is, perhaps, to have a point of view character named Benedict, that was always the character's name. Again, it's super cheesy, but this idea of like Mila was always called Mila, Benedict was always called Benedict. That is just their name. Like it just is to me. That is just like a simplest four kind of scenario. I don't hate Ben, but Ben is a character who I think he's got a lot of growing up to do during Purple Prince. Like he's for the character that he is to become later on in the series. I think he needs to suffer some indignities and really kind of be put through the ringer. I feel like that kind of applies to all the characters, though. Maybe the Ben chapters kind of hit hardest for you, Jimmy, perhaps. But I feel like all four of the point of view characters, Mila, Ben, Raywin, and Angelo, I feel like they all kind of suffer a bit. Like they all encounter crises and leave the Purple Prince, the book. They leave that with scars, both literal and emotional, that I definitely think will kind of shape who they become in the subsequent books. Yeah, no, Ben's an interesting character. I think for me, he's probably my least favorite of the four characters, at least at where the Purple Prince is. Whether this, and as of book 1, I think Ben is the character I'm I was least enthusiastic about writing, but he's the character I am most enthusiastic about writing for book 2. Just based on the trajectory that is maybe hinted at in his final epilogue that you guys read, where he's sort of suddenly, you're not quite sure where in reality he is, but he is alive in some capacity, and he has a mysterious mentor, and sky's the limit as far as it seems. So yeah, I think Ben's going to be really I think a highlight of book 2, certainly. Yeah, moving forward.
nice.
Did your brother know that character's?
Honestly, yeah, no, he knows. He actually between the book becoming available digitally, like on Kindle and such, and being emailed to Kickstarter backers, and it going to physical print, Benedict, brother of mine, he read the book, and he works as a proofreader for a living for the Finnish government. So he caught some errors that I had missed and my editor had missed, despite multiple read-throughs. So yeah, he both knows about Ben the character and has read this book with a very close eye. So yeah, he's well aware.
Question from Mitch: how many Dread Phallus references next book?
That's something I think I'm gonna just leave to Baker. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go there. Necromancers get a bad rap for raising a family. Oh, that took me a second.
Yeah.
What is everyone's favorite setting in this book? Because we get a lot of really beautiful descriptions about the places that we're going. Like I didn't have any trouble getting immersed in this world. My favorite is Austria, the cities above clouds. I thought that was amazing, and like the moon road to get there. I mean, just one of the more cool settings I've read in all fantasy, really.
I would
Wow.
agree. Like a winter setting that's not really like scary. Maybe it's the A Song of Ice and Fire decade-long obsession I had, but like, the north is a scary place. The cold is dreadful, but in Austria it's like it's beautiful. There's like northern lights, and there's the flowers that bloom in the snow, the purple flowers in the snow, and the antler people, which maybe we can get an answer to Ben's question, where'd the antlers come from? But yeah, it's very like regal and elegant and quiet and still, and just like a beautiful seeming place.
Feels very majestic. It
With-
kind of reminds me of the Vale a little bit, like in A Song of Ice and Fire. When I first read the description of the Vale in a Game of Thrones, I was like, oh my God, like that is incredible. Kind of the same vibes that I got from Austria.
Mhm.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, me too. Same thing.
Austria. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to spend more time in Austria as a location. You're definitely going to get a whole lot more of it. It is fairly integral to this first book, at least in the beginning, because I mean, of course, the prologue takes place in Austria, and then it jumps right into 5 Neela chapters back to back where she's on her way there. So you definitely get a hopefully a fairly tantalizing glimpse of the place. But yeah, I think the way that it's worked out is that each book, not by design, but by some kind of weird consequence, or maybe some kind of like subconscious design, each book is going to sort of revolve around a different continent. So like this first book, I think, is very Caerhallen heavy. That's the Imperial continent. Like you have a lot of both Angelo and Ben are in the Imperial capital. And then there is the fateful road trip, Ben and the Imperial family going to Sungard. And then, of course, the climax of the book happens in Sungard, with all 4 of the point of view characters and Endymion are all there. So it's very Caerhallen heavy. Yeah, book 2 is going to be very Dernheim heavy. But book 3 is going to be Austria centric, and I'm really looking forward to that because that aesthetic. I don't know if I could point to a particular real world culture or a real world culture or like a fictitious setting that inspired Austria. I guess it's kind of a sort of like an amalgam of a few different inspirations, but yeah, Austria for me, it's kind of I wanted to have like a wintry, snowy setting, but rather than like the wintry, snowy setting being the super dangerous kind of Nordic kind of like in a lot of books like The North is kind of like the Viking or Celtic kind of barbarian place. It's pine trees and it's axes and it's blood and it's hearts and it's wolf pelts and it's that kind of vibe. I definitely have a lot of that kind of aesthetic going on with Dernheim, the land of autumn. But with Austria, I wanted kind of this kind of as you say, like regal is a nice word to me. Winter and snow as kind of like quite a peaceful sort of kind of dream-like, like I not winter in terms of like White Walkers and giant wolves, but more winter in terms of like, I don't know, like a lamppost surrounded by snow, kind of like maybe a little bit more kind of Narnia or something. But as far as the maybe this is just me trying to compensate for me suffering through Icelandic winters once a year. I'm trying to romanticize winter and the cold, possibly. But as far as the antlers go, for our good friend Ben, who asked about that a good half hour ago. Yeah, the antlers for me, maybe it came from my favorite TV show of all time is Hannibal, and that's a show with a very wild visual aesthetic
Really
and
good.
crazy fucking dream sequences and like hallucinatory sequences, and in quite a lot of those, I guess we're getting into Hannibal spoilers all of a sudden, but so Hannibal famously is a cannibal, and there's a race. It's a Native American mythological creature, the Wendigo, right? That is created when a human, through perversion or through necessity, is either forced to or partakes of human flesh, and they become kind of shrank-like and just permanently disfigured from their consuming of human flesh. Yeah, Hannibal appears as a Wendigo in some of these trippy sequences in the show, and he has antlers, and something about that image of just like a humanoid creature with antlers is just super evocative for me. I also think of like the Black Cauldron from that series of books, and also from like that super underrated Disney film. Is his name the Horned King? I don't know. There's a few pieces of media that I've encountered where there's like a antlered person, a villain usually, and I just find it like a super striking image. Yeah, and I don't know. It just, for me, it felt kind of weirdly. It fit the vibe of Austria that I already had going. Maybe it's like the antlers kind of curve in a kind of crescent shape, and Austria is all about like the moon and stuff. I don't know. It's difficult to kind of pick this stuff apart sometimes when it's just been the way it is in my head for almost a decade. But yeah, no. Antlers, yeah, I'd lay quite a lot of the blame at Hannibal. But yeah, Austria as a location, I really like Austria, and I'm looking forward to being there more. Yeah, there's a lot of aspects of this world that I'm super excited to get into, because all the time like that I was writing this book, I had this personal mission of like, this is not going to be a doorstopper fantasy book. It's not going to be some big fat, you know, many hundred, even 1,000-page volume. That's just such a tired thing. Fantasy books don't need to be that long. I really like a snappy, lean, aerodynamic fantasy story, like an Earthsea novel or something, where it doesn't have to be fucking enormous. You know, like I think that we need less of the heavy doorstopper stuff and more of the kind of lean thing. And I went in and being like, I'm gonna go for some like, yeah, really lean fantasy book which has a sprawling world, but somehow that is all packed into a neat little package. And then it just, by the end of it, I mean, this thing is 600 pages. Oops, like, yeah,
Oops.
Christ. That
Well,
just kind of
it's a
happened.
big challenge. It's tough, and that's why, you know, I think Le Guin is a master, because somehow she realized Earthsea, you know, and she could do it in such a brief amount of time. I don't think it's an easy thing to do at all. I really
To
don't.
crystallize it down to its essence like that. No, because I with like a constant overarching goal of having this thing lean, it ended up being as big as it is, and I still feel like there are so many aspects of the world that feel maybe not underexplained, but that like, oh wow, I didn't get to this, I didn't get to that, I didn't get to, like there's this. I feel like even in this 600-page monolith, there's so much that I barely brushed upon in the world. Which is, it's frustrating to me that I wasn't able to kind of hack it in there and kind of Le Guin style, but I guess that's also exciting for me, that there's so much for me to sink my teeth into still as a writer, and then for you guys as readers.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting as a reader, for sure.
Yeah, the world does really feel huge and epic, and like there's so much to explore. It doesn't feel constrained, even though like, and yeah, the book is 600 pages, but I think it does have an aerodynamic sense about it. I am usually a pretty slow reader, and I think I blew through this book. Like I couldn't set it down, and we had kind of a read along going, and we were all chatting amongst ourselves, and then realized that we just read another 150 pages, and it went fast. It's the pacing, I think, is phenomenal in this book. And I don't think I don't know. I'm not one that usually appreciates like good pacing. I can chill and meander, or if something's really fast paced, I don't really mind. But something in The Purple Prince felt like really well put together with pacing. Like the events happened at good times, and it was always really smooth. There weren't any real lulls, but you never felt bogged down in information, and the world still felt huge, and like there was still so much to explore. I was just skimming through, like a lot of stuff happened in this book that I've forgotten about since I read it 6 months ago.
Me too.
There's a ton of stuff packed in here. Yeah, just I thought that was really well done. How big it is, but how it feels like it's just smooth sailing the whole way through.
That's such a relief to hear. I think that is the product of me having this like deathly fear of boring the reader at any point, or like not to the point where it's like breakneck pacing and every scene is a fight scene or something like that, but there were quite a lot of chapters I cut where I was reading back of them. I've saved them, like I have them in like a Word document called deleted scenes actually on my computer, and it's all of the chapters that I just ripped out, root and stem. And I've been reading them back a bit, and there's stuff in there that I'm definitely proud of, and stuff in there that I think it's not bad, but I guess these are the things that would have taken away from what Amanda you called that kind of smooth sailing thing. Like these would have been lulls, with not that they would have been not worth it, but this would have definitely have been the kind of the roller coaster kind of slowing down to kind of smell the roses or whatever. I was very afraid of anyone being bored while reading this book. I it's this kind of double standard where like I'm a very patient reader, I think, like up to a point, as far as like reading stuff that's very methodical, very slowly paced, very like not a whole lot is happening. We're just kind of wallowing in world details, or we're just character work is being done and not a lot is happening kind of plot wise, and it's not kind of it's not snappy by any means, but things are still kind of happening. Like I'm a very patient reader often with stuff like that, but I have this hypocrisy where anything that fell under that category for me when I was going over the final manuscript, I just ripped it right out. I think that also spilled over into that philosophy of like, oh, if it's gonna test someone's patience, rip it out. That also applied to the prose a little bit, because there were definitely some unhinged, half a page long, medieval McCarthy inspired run on sentence extravaganzas that were so much fun to write, and some of the writing I've been proudest of, and yet they ended up on the cutting room floor just because I just had this concern of like, oh, but what if someone's not into that, or what if I'm asking too much, or what if I guess kind of a fear of sticking my neck out, of like indulging myself, or yeah, some of my absolute favorite writers aspire to and achieve that like really extravagant kind of purple prose, which is I guess quite appropriate for this book. But people like McCarthy and Mieville and Nabokov, these are writers who have incredibly complex language and incredibly complex sentences, and they what they aspire to is some like grandiose kind of Sistine Chapel type shit. I had an honest attempt at emulating that sort of thing, and to remove myself from that arena and not even dare throw my hat in with those guys, I took that stuff out because I thought, like, who am I kidding? Like, I can't even begin to. I'm never going to be mentioned in the same breath as these dudes. Why am I emulating their style and being as ambitious as them as writers? I should just reel it in and keep it fairly on a leash. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think this book could have been, rather than 600 pages long, it could have been 1,000 pages long. It could have been more backstory, more side questy, slice of lifey stuff. There could have been some considerably wilder scenes and sentences in there, but I think I was kind of not self sort of not like self-censoring, but what I told myself is I'll do this stuff later. If people like this first book and if people are on board with the story and the characters and the world, once I've kind of hooked them and got you guys kind of, invested, then I can get weird and then I can get ambitious and then I can put my neck out there and attempt something wilder than this. I can put in one of those like 2-page sentences, which is just this crazy run-on extravaganza with uh, a bunch of 50-cent words in there. That's gonna come later. I think it felt too bold to do it in like a debut self pub. It's like who am I kidding to aspire to something like that when I'm just some dude.
Yeah, Rachel, you kept you kept the stuff you ripped out. Is that something I should have done? I just deleted it to avoid temptation of re-adding it.
Yeah, I kept it. I'm a hoarder though. I'm like in every conceivable walk of life. I could tilt my camera and show you how many like old yogurt and ice cream containers I have just like stacked there in case I need them sometime. I never throw anything away. And if it's something I've written, I'm just like, oh, maybe I'll use this somewhere. Um, I don't know. I've saved it all. There's never anything that I've like dragged to the recycle bin and emptied, and it's just been obliterated from existence. Everything, even there's stuff I'm really proud of that I've kept, and there's stuff that I think is kind of terrible that I've kept too. But I feel like it's been part of the journey. It's part of my history. Even if I go back and read it, being like, oh shit, this thing I wrote in like 2015 is so cringe, and I had no idea what I was doing. It's humbling, and I can look at it in a kind of like a self-deprecating, like, oh, I'm such a shit right away, or I can also look at it and be like, if I read that compared to something I wrote 5 years later, you could see that I have grown at least somewhat as a writer, and it's I'm never going to throw that stuff away. I don't know if I'll ever make it publicly accessible in any way, but it's I'm not going to show it anytime soon though. Mitch says, did you feel like DJ Khaled sang another one with every epilogue you wrote? See, that's the thing. Okay, that's one area in which I had an instinct to rein myself in, and I didn't and couldn't, and that was with the epilogues. Anyone who's read this book, I hope everyone watching at this point has read it, because we've gotten into all sorts of spoilers. But this book has 4 epilogues, which is like,
Sure does.
I mean, come on, dude. Like, that's like 50 pages. But like, I felt like once that moment had happened, okay, at this point, if anyone hasn't read the book through to the very end, just stop watching. But okay, here we go. At the point where the titular character, the Purple Prince, dies, that felt like the end of the book and the start of the epilogues. Like, that felt like the kind of the climax had climaxed, and anything after that is kind of just like denouement, kind of sort of sweeping up the carnage and the ashes kind of stuff. And I felt like I owed it to each of these 4 point of view characters to have, once that huge event had happened, and shit had gone down at this wedding, I felt like for the character's sake and for my own sake and for the reader's sake as well, to kind of stay invested and be like, well, why do I keep reading? Like, where from here? Where to from here? I wanted to kind of give each of these characters a send off, both the sort of like taking stock of what the fuck just happened, like what happened to them as a character in the previous 600 pages, and also the where to from here thing. And that's what I was really excited about, because again, both for the reader's sake and for my own, I wanted to hint at least what comes next for each of these characters. I felt like I like you could have maybe gotten away with just having Raywin's epilogue, which is the first epilogue. Like, that's like right after Endymion dies, it cuts to her standing there with his blood dripping down her wrist, being like, oh my god, like, the old world I knew, the old life, like it is super dead. It died with him. Like, what happens next? Like, I could have possibly gotten away with just leaving there, but as far as the other characters go, I feel like, yeah, Mila deserved, as a character who started the book having left her real, like her childhood home, never to return, and on her way searching uncertainly through peril for a new home. I felt like she deserved a homecoming kind of chapter, and for all of the suffering and the indignities that she had suffered throughout the book. Um, she spent Mila spent a whole lot of time of this book in captivity, which is something on reflection I'm not thrilled about, but it kind of, I guess it served its narrative purpose. But I think she deserved kind of like an optimistic homecoming chapter. Angelo, yeah, I think if I cut from where Angelo was left off, having fled into the night, having killed both Ariel and Benedict, according to, as far as Angelo knew, leaving it there would have just been super bleak, and also you wouldn't really know what the hell would happen next for that character. And again, like I really wanted to give some sense of what comes next. And then for Ben also, like if I didn't include Ben's epilogue, I feel like as far as anyone knew, Ben was dead, and that was it. Maybe that would have been a bigger, better twist for book 2 when it turns out he's not. But I don't know. That scene when he's inside the Sword of Heaven and he is communicating with this Balduric dude, and they're sitting there having this conversation about like, yeah, you almost died, but like you're not dead, and like your story doesn't end here. Like, you're destined for greatness. You're not like there's this potion called the Wrath of the Gods that didn't kill you. Like, you're not going to be a victim of that. Like, you're going to be above the gods. You're going to be like the next level. Like, I really did want to write that stuff and kind of set up book 2 in a lot of ways, because I don't know how much I've revealed on Discord and stuff, but like, full disclosure, book 2 happens 17 years after book 1. There's a huge time jump from this book to the next one. And I feel like without that kind of indication of where the story is headed, that time jump would have just been too much. It would have been too wild to have kind of like a cut to black cliffhanger type inconclusive ending to book 1. And then when you pick up book 2, being like, oh, is Ben alive? What's up with Angelo? Did he make it out of Sungard? And Mila, is she just like damaged beyond repair? Or like what's going to happen next? Like, it really needed that kind of these characters to get this kind of like trampoline bounce towards where they are going, given that where they are going, as far as like the reader's gonna know, is really far away, like chronologically. Like, as I said, book 2 is going to happen 17 years later, and of course all of these characters are going to just about double in age, and there's going to be 3 new point of view characters who weren't born at the time of the Purple Prince. And I think the epilogues are an essential bridge between Purple Prince and that enormous 17-year chasm, and then Pale Lady. Without that, it would just be too much to ask of a reader, I think, to jump like that.
And Garrick, I am glad that the death fake out as in this book instead of beginning of the next book was a great touch.
Okay.
I would agree. I'm really glad we got a Ben epilogue, because as soon as everything happened with Ben, the rest of the book is like, I gotta know what happened to this guy. So I'm glad we got some resolution, and also huge intrigue for where that's going to go, and propel Ben to the next level. Not that I didn't like him as a character. I really like Ben as a character. I like the hesitant heir and his horrible dad. That dynamic was fun to read. And then just the awful what he ended up dealing with at the end with his sister. It's exciting to see where he's going to go.
Yeah, I think it gives him a good arc in book 1, knowing that there's still more to come. I think it was important to do that. And definitely if you start out book 2 with like a fake out death, it's a big bridge. Like it's hard for me to get across that gap. I
Yeah.
tend to not like these things. There's been a couple authors that have done it that have worked for me, but I don't think I've ever liked it. I think it's been non-offensive in some circumstances. So I was happy to see that that epilogue.
Yeah, I think it's the way I'm going to do it, because like I think if a character dies, or at least appears to die, as far as everyone else is concerned within the story, there needs to be some, when they get reintroduced, there needs to be some kind of psychic distance. They need to reappear as a bit of a stranger, like, you know, the way that Gandalf reappears,
Yes.
and he's kind of just this like imposing silhouette, and then it finally resolves, and it's like, oh shit, it's him. Like, you know, they need to come back into the story after their fake out death as a stranger. I think that's the most natural way for that to go. And the way I've done it now is, instead of having a fake out death happening in book 2, Ben is going to be reintroduced in book 2, but the first time we see him will not be from his point of view. It will be from the point of view who another character is dreaming, and their dream is seen through Ben's eyes. So it's going to have this depersonalization of where they're going to be a man, and they're going to be wandering around. They're going to see their hands and what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, and da, 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 da. And over the course of that dream sequence chapter, it's going to be revealed to the reader that this is Benedict Kildarian. And I think because the fake out happened in the first book, I had to do something for that distance, because if I just gave him the 17-year leap forward treatment, he'd be at the same level of removal from the reader as all the other characters are. I think he needed an additional resurrection type. He needed to be alienated a little bit. So I've done it like that, where he's gonna first show up through another person's eyes, and then we get a Ben chapter. But
the bee's knees, I would have been so sad not to know at the end that he was okay. He's my favorite character.
That's right, bees.
I think Ben's my favorite as well.
Yeah. I think it would have been too kind of wannabe try-hard edgelord grimdark if both Ben and Ariel both died. I think that's just kind of like that's just kind of too sadistic, and like even though like as far as anyone's concerned, they are both dead, like in this world, like, and like Larrick, his father, is certainly spinning this as I just lost both my kids. Can you like forgive me for being a tyrant, because now I'm just a grieving dad? Can you just like pull it with the anti-imperial sentiment? Like it's definitely politically being used as though they are both dead, but like I think if they were both legit dead, I don't know. And again, like Ben, all of these characters are in it for the long haul. They are all like this. They are the story as far as I'm concerned. Again, I keep reverting to these pretentious cliches, but like I feel like I know these characters so well, and they just kind of came to me. Like I just and in that sense of like the story just writing itself. Like I just like, okay, oh, there's a girl. Her name is Mila, definitely. She's from a place called Vala. I don't know what Vala is yet, but like we'll get there. But she is. And then there's this character. He's definitely called Benedict. There's no question. And these characters are going to be like the through lines of the whole thing. And though the world around them is going to be changing dramatically, and there's going to be all sorts of wild sequences and revolutions and upheavals and conflict and what have you, it's ultimately going to come down to these four are going to be carrying it through. They're the constants throughout. So they were always going to be in it through to the end.
I liked God Hand Apostle-esque that got revealed near the end.
Are we talking? Oh yeah. So it's something that I briefly foreshadowed earlier in the book, that there are these 5 gods, Raphael, Dern, Anatsu, Narael, and Emma. And in the beginning, way back when, before the world was made, before the River Dream existed, they, to triumph over the void and like the forces of chaos, they had to face like shadow versions of themselves. So like Anatsu is like the embodiment of like love and honor, and she had to fight like hatred. And then Raphael, who is the embodiment of, maybe I should show up these images while I'm doing it, just so this isn't just a bunch of proper nouns and bullshit. But Raphael here, he's like the god of wisdom and intelligence. He had to fight against this like evil god of madness and lies. And then Stern, who's the god of like hospitality, generosity, selflessness. He had to fight against the god of avarice. Nyrael, who's the god of like fortitude and like peace, like emotional peace. Like she's like the god of like fortitude and hope, I suppose. And she had to fight against like the god of like fear and misery. And then who we left here? Yeah, Nemeth, the god of justice and mercy, had to fight against the god of cruelty and vengeance. So yeah, they all had like, they were these kind of radiant godlings in the void, so they were like these bright flames, and the things they were fighting were the shadows that they cast. And I briefly mentioned them. I believe it's when Mila has first gotten accepted into the Fallen, and she's wandering around the fortress, and she's like running her hand along like some like relief on the wall, some like etching from long ago, from the times of yore, and it's a scene that's depicted there of the 5 gods fighting the 5 anti-gods, essentially the 5 no gods, if you will. Yeah, and then later on it's revealed that there are a group of religious zealots in the present who worship these guys, and they're trying to bring them into reality. They're trying to they keep talking about like this thing called the last midnight, which is like this kind of apocalypse type scenario where they will successfully summon these 5 anti-god things into reality. You know, they won't be out in chaos anymore where they've been trapped for eons. They will have breached the ramparts of the River Dream, and they will be here on the ground with the mortals to wreak havoc and burn it all to the ground. That was it. I very briefly kind of touched on that, but then yeah, you have that sequence with Carmen, and there's like the cathedral, and what I was trying to do there was like set up this as like this is important, this is gonna come into play later. Like these behind the scenes, unbeknownst to anyone else, these dudes have been, again, like the consult or something, like slowly working on their shit, these little pet projects of theirs, tinkering away in the shadows. And yeah, that egg is gonna hatch essentially. So yeah, I'm glad Mitch like that, because that's some of the stuff when I was talking about the aspects of this world and story that I didn't get to in these 600 pages. That's a big part of like, okay, you've got Mila and the Fallen and Adrana and like the cultists who worship like the good gods, but then you also have the antithesis of that. But again, that was also me. One thing I'm really interested in, and I really enjoy about. Oh, sorry. I think you lost me for a second there.
No, you're
I'm still here. Great.
Yeah,
Cool.
you're good.
One thing that I really like about reading fictional worlds is the kind of multiplicity of belief when there is a single reality. You know, there's a single state of affairs, and there's a bunch of different people who have different perspectives on it. And I really wanted to tap into that with this idea of like these different factions who hold very, very contrary beliefs about the same thing. So like you have the Fallen who view the gods as good, and mortals were wrong and evil to kill them and usurp them. We should bring them back. And then you have people like the Kildarians. They're not atheistic, but they're anti-theistic. They believe in the gods, they just don't like them very much. And they believe that, no, the gods were cruel, and that's like the ultimate tyranny, to be ruled by the people that made you. We should do the existential species thing of moving out of home and like, yeah, kill them and just rule ourselves. And like, yeah, the golden age isn't in the past, something that we return to. The golden age is the future. Let's develop technology enough where we take their creation and we improve upon it. And then I also, yeah, it was inspired by this. I was like, okay, but what if there's like a third I guess there's a fourth. The third one is Angelo suggests in that meeting with Rosalind, where he's like, "What if it's all a lie? What if like the gods aren't real? They're not good or evil. They just aren't a thing. They're just like a useful fiction for the Kildarians to like justify their regime." But then there was this fourth one where I was like, okay, but what if the gods are evil but for a different reason? And then yeah, so the whole Black Church thing is it's kind of nihilistic. It's just this idea of like, what if non-existence is the natural state of affairs? If just void is just how things originally were, that's just like the organic natural shape, and any attempt to cultivate that chaos and have order, have existence, have any sort of creation is a is rebellion, is a aberration, or it's like a you're disfiguring the natural order, you're disrupting the natural order to build something. I find that like an interesting perspective, this idea of like maybe the universe wasn't meant to happen as it did, maybe humans weren't meant to exist, you know, like and yeah, I don't mean that in like some like super like fake deep emo way, like I just mean like existentially, like maybe I don't know, like maybe the like the natural order, like at first there was nothing, and then according to the second law of thermodynamics, eventually there'll be nothing again. Maybe that just that dreamless sleep, that just like state of zero is just where things are supposed to be. And I guess that really casts any kind of human endeavor, anything we're doing in the kind of the meantime, as ultimately futile. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if all that human endeavor and human life is just like this brief glimmer bookended by just like darkness, I think that makes it almost more beautiful in a way, that it's such a stark contrast, such a fleeting thing. But yeah, I really wanted to like, because yeah, as I said, like when I was studying Greek myth, I came up with this cosmogony of this world, of these gods and this order and chaos giving rise to creation and yada yada yada. And I just wanted to have as many perspectives on that state of cosmic affairs as possible. People rooting for all sorts of different things. Yeah, I might have gone overboard in that respect, but I definitely wanted it to feel as though every possible kind of prescription that you could get from this world had kind of been explored. Like there will be people that are rooting for A, people are rooting for B, people are rooting for C and D. But yeah, again, that's something that is more touched upon in this first book than delved into, and that's all coming later.
Benjamin, this is all pretty rad. Gotta say, reading like 100 fantasy books a year can make it all the worlds blend together, but yours absolutely stands out.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Very unique.
Yeah, I think it's also pretty realistic to have people who have all those questions in your world. I think a lot of times it's usually A and B with maybe a C, right? Like an A-B view. And then there's like maybe one outsider. And even that's pretty rare. So to see like multiple upon multiple ways that people view these gods and their myth, right, of creation is pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I deliberately set up like that's something I really like in fantasy, and it's something I've really enjoyed in yeah, various works. There's sort of that ambiguity of prophecy, the idea that these words can be interpreted in many different ways based on how you approach them or what you want. You read what you want to read. So like this thing of like the Pale Lady, right? Like that's Lumion, the mother of gods reincarnated. She's gonna be green of eye and pale of skin. She's gonna, you know, vanquish tyranny and set free her children. The fallen, the religious sect of this world that Mila becomes a member of, they believe that their leader is the Pale Lady, but the Kildarians, their opponents in every respect, their ideological opponents and their material opponents, they also make this weird claim where like they are anti-theistic and they think the gods fucking suck, but like they also claim that they're the first emperor, the one who vanquished the gods and established the empire, Florence Gildarian. They claim that she was actually Pale Lady too, and she was coming back to life, this divinity reborn in mortal form, there simply to say divinity is over. Mortals, you rule the roost now. It's over to you guys. She reincarnated simply to pass the torch, and to denounce her children. And then something that I hinted at in that chapter that Mitch mentioned in the little comment that popped up before, with this kind of God hand apostle thing. The leader of that there he goes, with his Inkaroi and Kellis cuddling. Inkaroi playing the big spoon. I like that. The thing that was touched on in that prologue, sorry, that epilogue rather, that the leader of the Black Church, Father Ilian, he sees Carmen, this little girl, this little horned, half Durnic, half Estrian girl. He sees her and he's like, "Oh wow, you barely bleed a color at all. Like you're letting off very little emotion or personality. You're just like this traumatized husk. But like, you've got green eyes. Oh, you've got pale skin. So like, he also has this idea of like, oh, maybe the pale lady is the friends we made along the way. Maybe the pale lady is just like, that prophecy is just like a set of conditions to be met. And like, hey, if I produce, like, what we need to do is like go to this certain location and say these certain words, and then the prophecy is fulfilled. I'll just get any old gal who's got green eyes and pale skin, and if she's bent to my will and she's representing my interests, maybe she can just fit the bill. You know, she meets the criteria. Yeah, again, that's just like these ambiguous prophecies, or like people interpreting prophecies in scripture for super selfish, self-serving reasons, is something I really like in literature and in fantasy. And yeah, I wanted to go all the way down that road here.
I dig it.
Yeah, and then having the magic system based on like the values of whatever god you're trying to, I guess, use the powers of, and the way that like emotions tie into that. And in order to use a certain kind of magic, you have to suppress or like really feel different kinds of emotions, and then how that might be affected by how you believe, how people that don't believe in these gods might use different kinds of magic, how maybe it's all like any interpretation might be true, because you have the river dream that seems like some sort of like reality busting, like multi-dimensional something. So yeah, a lot of possibility for things to go some interesting places.
Yeah, we're gonna need more than books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're coming.
you got that driver's number.
Yeah.
Yeah, please set me up, run me down. But no, I like recently I've really been on the input rather than the output. So I thought, like, before I write another book, I want to get to some series that I've been meaning to. So like, since writing this book, I've read a bunch of standalones. I've read a bunch of fantasy and sci-fi and literary fiction. I've read a couple big series. I finished Second Apocalypse and The Dark Tower, both in the last couple of weeks.
Wow.
That's part of why I needed to skim this in the hour before the stream and kind of refresh, is because I was rusty on my own writing. It just I've been on safari in so many other people's worlds, and I've spent so much time with other characters other than my own, that I was just like, yeah, I couldn't quite remember what happened. Or I could remember what happened, but I couldn't remember where this book ends, and like, I couldn't remember what's in this book and what isn't, because it's all in my head, all 5 books worth, and all, you know, all this sprawling story, this convoluted mess it's all up here, and also in kind of note form on my computer. But I can't remember. I couldn't remember what I actually included in the novel, what I hinted at, and what is just completely still to come. So I thought I owed it to you guys and anyone else who may be watching to refresh, in case I spoil the whole series or something. Say the wrong name, and oh shit, that's what happens. Yeah. But speaking of the rest of the series, book 2 and onwards, this is quite indulgent of me, but I'd love to hear if you guys have any theories of what's to come.
I don't necessarily have any theories, but I'm extremely interested in where Angelo goes from here. And then the end of his epilogue, I remember him seeing something kind of being like spelled out, and it went a couple different ways, and it came back down to his name and Riscorio. Let me look. I can't remember the exact spelling.
Riscuro.
Oscuro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't have any theories
Rossi.
about that, but something's going on there. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Amanda?
I can't think of any theories. Again, I want to know what's behind that door in that tavern with like the weird noises and the mystery there. I think there's like a whole untapped Lovecraftian side of this that we've barely seen the surface of, especially with Mila's dream. And I think there's like a guy crawling into a griffin, or and I think that's the King Lyric, and trying to do something with his dead wife. So I think there's a lot more behind the royal family than we know about, and a lot more to Lyric than we know. So I'm really excited for all of that. But as for theories, I'm terrible with theories.
Same.
Malazan ruined my theory ability. I can't do theories anymore. I'm most curious about what's next for Benjamin. Is what I'm looking forward to, where his journey takes him.
Mm-hmm.
For Benny Boy. Yeah, I think I'm most excited for Ben. I'm excited for all these characters, honestly. I stand by that statement I made earlier that I think this first book, I'm proud of it, and I think it's all right, but I think it's going to be the weakest of the 5 if I hopefully end up finishing the series, if I end up writing and releasing them all someday in the future. I think this is going to be the sort of this is going to be the sort of introductory tale, maybe a bit of fun on standing on its own, but also largely sort of planting seeds for things to bear fruit later.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited for what comes next. I just hope I get there. It's difficult to find the time to write. Like I mentioned in my little intro at the start of the stream, father of 2, and just working and living, and there's only so many hours in the day, so it's can be difficult to find the time to write. But I'm very passionate about this whole thing. It's my baby as well. It's my 3rd child. I don't have any delusions about making a living doing this or anything like that. But it's a story that I've had in my head for a long time, a story I really want to tell, and hopefully I get it all out there one day, and fingers crossed someone even reads it. So we'll see.
Awesome.
And what days are you most out in public, so we can tell our guy?
Driver. Wednesdays are pretty good. Yeah, Wednesdays are
Wednesdays
good
at work.
opportunity
Okay, good.
We'll
to run
pass
me
on.
down. Yeah.
Mitch Angelo is going to start a skooma cartel, but he keeps getting high on his own supply. Rookie move.
Oh wait, are the skooma those dudes, the feline creatures from Elder Scrolls?
Yeah, the like the drug in Elder Scrolls. Skooma.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, Mitch may or may not be onto something there. We'll see.
Okay. Prediction: Raywin is going to find herself in yet another love quadrangle.
Oh.
Oof.
Raywin, she was a source of some pretty funny stuff in this book. Some more of the lighthearted, like not love triangle, but just messy. And I love a messy girl to read about. So
Raywin needs to learn how to love herself. Okay, that's what we need from Ray.
Yeah. That girl just needs to stop looking for fulfillment in other places and other people. Like even begins like in the first Raywin chapter. Honestly, Raywin's my favorite character, both as of the Purple Prince and for the series as a whole, as I have conceived of it. But I begin that first Raywin chapter. She is standing on her balcony and gazing out longingly at the world beyond the horizon, and thinking like, "Oh, there's something missing in here, man, and it's out there somewhere, man, and I just need to go out and find it, man. And I think that outward searching, fumbling around looking for your fulfillment elsewhere, I think maybe she just needs to look on the inside, you know. Maybe her love and happiness is right at home where she left it. I don't know. We'll see.
Looking forward. You get to let us know when the Kickstarter for book 2 is gearing up and ready to go.
Yeah, I'll hopefully have, as I mentioned, I'll hopefully have someone else to take care of that whole mess for me, to run the social media and do the kind of the ones and zeros part of it. I'll just worry about the dream sequences and the prophecies and whatnot.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming by and for chatting with us about your work.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Yeah, this is a blast, and I'm ready for book 2.
Very ready for book 2.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Watch your back, Sebastian. Coming for you.
I think a head-on collision is going to do the most damage and put me like in a kind of like hospital bed riding situation for the longest. So yeah,
It'll just be your right hand. That'll be just enough so you can pin.
Oof. I'm a lefty as well.
So. Damage.
All right, I'll make sure he knows it's your left. That's fine.
Before we go, Amanda, can you tell us where to find you and your channel?
Sure. Yeah, I'm at Shelf Unstable, just like it is in the name. And that's pretty much it. I don't have Twitter. I don't have anything else. So just come see me on YouTube, Shelf Unstable.
Nice. And Jimmy?
Do you ever sit and wonder to yourself, what is my next best fantasy read? How do I figure out of all these books what I should read next? Well, I have the answers for you right over at the Fantasy Network. I am Jimmy Nuts, of course, and I'll be your host over there. And I have all sorts of reviews that you can check out in the long bookish content. So go over there and hit subscribe and join the party. Was that good? Was that fine?
That was.
Can I redo
impressive.
mine?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
I'm impressed.
Damn.
Wow. That was the best one yet. Wow. Perfect. You even looked away and everything was, wow.
You know, sometimes you got to bring it, you know?
Yeah. Impressive. Wow. Yeah, that was good. Impressive.
Yeah.
So I hate to have you go after Jimmy because it's hard to top that, but can you let us know where to find you too?
Yeah, well, I have a Goodreads author profile. If you find The Purple Prince on Goodreads, you can click my name there somewhere, and you'll find me. I'm going to post updates, anything relating to the future of the series, whether it's a Purple Prince audiobook or whether it's updates on the next books in the series. That'll all be there. I also have a Facebook page called the River Dream series. Check that out. Yeah. I'll just probably post on those two channels predominantly with any juicy tidbits on any upcoming stuff. I think we're going to get a Purple Prince audiobook hopefully in the next little while, and then it'll be news about the Pale Lady Kickstarter campaign. So yeah,
fantastic.
Watch the space.
Watch your back.
Yeah. And my front.
Keep an eye on those kneecaps.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for coming and chatting about The Purple Prince today. Really appreciate all of your time. And thanks to everyone who showed up in the chat. It always makes it a great experience when people interact and participate in the conversation. So we'll see everyone soon. We'll keep your eyes out for that Kickstarter campaign. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. We'll do our part. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.